The following is a conversation with Vít Jedlička, the founder and president of Liberland. I already talked about Liberland in the episode with Chris Albanese, but I think the context is very important for this episode, so I will introduce it again. Serbia and Croatia each recognize a different border around the Danube river. Some desirable land is claimed by both nations, and Gornja Siga, a swamp with an area of 7 square kilometers, is claimed by neither. Vít Jedlička claimed this land and launched a global movement to establish Liberland, new sovereign nation with digital government, voluntary taxes, and focus on freedom. Liberland is not recognized, but fits all the criteria for recognition, other than having a population. There are currently efforts to populate the area, which are actively and illegally blocked by the Croatian police. I talked with Vít about his education and political background, the progress of settlement efforts, land ownership in Liberland, virtual Liberland, and much more. Enjoy! Miscellaneous beings. I am Mick Ivanushik and you are listening to my voice. Welcome. Today I have Vít Jedlička here with me. He is the founder and president of Liberland. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Let's start with your background. What did you study?
Well, I studied economics and I studied political science. That was the Economic University of Prague and also Cevro Institute in Prague.
I can only imagine how that must have been useful throughout your career. But what did you do before starting Liberland?
I was actually working as a financial analyst. Well, shortly before starting Liberland, I went fully as a free entrepreneur. I started a business with Airbnb in Prague. At the time, it was very profitable. It was like a golden age of Airbnb in Prague. We rented some 20 flats at the same time. And but shortly before that, I was actually financial analyst. I was working for this brokerage company called Colosseum, which is the only Czech brokerage company that survived all the acquisitions, and I was the kind of their PR person.
Okay, so how did you stumble upon the idea to start Liberland? What was your political background, your motivations, and
Well, I was really motivated. On political side, I was working with the Free Citizens Party for quite some time. I was one of the co-founders. And I also started my own website, which I was pushing a lot of videos and translations. It's called reformy.cz, and it has more than 20 million views on all its channels. It was quite popular. But at some point, I realized when I was lecturing people about freedom that it doesn't make enough difference, that you cannot just talk about things, like you have to actively do them. Even though we had these 20 million views, I could kind of feel that people watched the videos, but they didn't really change their mindset about the world around them. And I was thinking it's actually much better than to try to convince some voters, for example, to vote libertarian. It's much easier to actually select the voters and then create a society.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you claimed the unclaimed land on the border of Serbia and Croatia.
Yes, because that was the best option at the time, and it actually still is. It was a genuine terra nullius, a place which was actively unclaimed by two countries.
Since then, you've made a lot of progress, but as someone who is seriously considering moving to Liberland, I want to ask you, I will finish my college studies in about 3 years. What are my odds of being able to live there? And I know you can't give us an exact number, but out of all the people in the world, you have the most information, so...
Well, it's difficult to say when we can reach some sort of reasonable settlement with Croatia. It is a question, that really lies a little bit on their side, I would say. But what I can do is to create the whole framework for the country, which will be run by latest technologies and run with the smartest ideas. And that's exactly what I want to do. No matter what is happening physically with Liberland, my aim is to create an ideal state that will be running on blockchain. And I also, have these side activities. We are now in this restaurant that is some 6 kilometers away from Liberland, and there are some 20 parcels around it. So we're actually physically developing place in Serbia, very close to Liberland, to have the physical experience of building something in the region, which I think is very necessary for the physical development of Liberland itself later on in the stages. So we will be able to live actually here.
Oh, very cool. So
For sure.
So you're developing a restaurant and surrounding buildings where people can live?
There is a nice project which you can see downstairs. There will be 4 glamping sites. There will be probably 14 houses here. It will be kind of a small showcase of how Liberland can look like. So I want our architects to basically offer the best that they can do on this little plot, which is not that little actually. It's 8 hectares of land plus 1 hectare of lake. And we have an additional 17 hectares here for development. And it's actually not that bad option for people that are looking for some alternative. Serbia itself is quite free, especially if you're not here as a tax resident. And many people can come here without visa. So this is our base camp for settlement of Liberland itself, and it's a actually good and reasonable residence option for many people around the world that applied for Liberland citizenship.
Cool. There's been a lot of talks at this festival about the Apathin free trade zone. Will this land we're at currently, the land that's being developed, part of this zone?
Well, it's not possible, but the free trade zone is a separate project which has dedicated parcels 4 kilometers away from here, so it's easy to drive bike there. If you decide to develop some project there, either as a Liberland company or as a Serbian company, you will be living in a place which is customs free and which is VAT free. And I think that those are the biggest hurdles that a company that wants to make business faces. So I would say it's not as good as Liberland, where there is also no regulation. Yes, there are some regulations, what you can and what you cannot do. There are some other taxes which can actually be optimized quite well. But the biggest hurdles that the businesses are facing, and customs is one of them, and VAT also is a big problem, especially if the state rejects to return it to you for whatever reason. Those things don't exist in these free trade zones in Serbia.
Cool. Another question that's been on my mind is I've seen a lot of architectural concepts of the city of Liberland, and it makes me a bit, I would almost say, concerned as to how much space will there be for an individual to design their own place to live. Will it be possible? I've also heard in the past that you are considering not selling the land of Liberland, but just renting it for prolonged periods of times, just like in Hong Kong. So I wanted to ask, what's the situation on that? Will it be possible to own land in Liberland and build your own house?
Well, that's something which is still debated, and it will be actually partially decided by the newly elected government. Right now, what we were thinking was basically leasing for 25 years the land, the pieces of the land, especially in the virtual reality, because we are developing whole Liberland first in virtual reality as a kind of a cyber urban incubator. We've got one of the best architectural studios in the world, Zaha Hadid, to back this up. And we are doing it on Unreal Engine and with some latest technologies. So up to 800 people will be able to be in Liberland, in the virtual Liberland simultaneously. And I think it's a great workspace for investors, architects, and other people that want to basically see how Liberland will look like, and they want to participate in its creation first before it is actually built in physical reality.
Cool. So people will be able to join through the internet, or do you have to
It is actually pixel streaming, so you will not even have to install anything, just like YouTube, but you are able to control your environment.
Oh, cool. But you need to own a headset, right?
No, not. No, it works also with headset, but normally you can just use your screen to join into it.
Oh, very cool. Well, I will definitely have a look. So this company will then presumably be building Liberland if they're successful and people like their designs. Do
Well, I
understand it
think there
correctly?
will be a big debate inside of the virtual reality itself, what the structure should be. You know, that people will be able to view it, they will be able to comment on the shape of the buildings, on the parcel layout. I asked Zaha Hadid basically to lay out the Liberland in a way that every citizen could have a 500-meter plot initially rented, but of course the final decision can be different. That means everybody that has 5,000 merits will get also 500 meters of space for their own development inside of Liberland.
500 square meters.
That's the basically the count that we had from beginning. That 10 merits basically equals to 10 square meters.
Cool.
So what we can guarantee you for sure in the development that you will have this space in a virtual reality. And I don't know if you're familiar with these projects like the Centerland or Somnium Space. They're very popular. There are at least 4 of them that have made a multi-million-dollar success. So we're kind of following up on that, but we are doing it for a practical reason. We really need a debate on how Liberland itself will be developed in some sort of workspace.
So those other projects you talked about, those were virtual reality sort of marketplace where people could have commented on how things looked like and maybe modify them or have them modified, and then they were built into reality and they were successful?
Well, they're actually completely disconnected from any physical development. The Decentraland is completely virtual project with virtual land. What is cool about Liberland that it's actually connected to real physical space. So we have that as a bonus, right? It's kind of crazy that, for example, in the Decentraland, the land sells almost more expensive, for example, than the land here in Serbia, even though it's just a virtual space. And I think, there is a huge benefit in doing this virtual cyber urban incubator for Liberland. First of all, really because there could be some sort of consensus how things should be laid out and a debate, and everybody could see and walk through the buildings. And second of all, there is this huge move towards virtual reality anyway, so why don't we build another Liberland in parallel?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love it. This virtual reality sounds great. So, will the studio is commissioned with designing the public spaces and infrastructure, while citizens will be in charge of their small living spaces, and they will be able to build what they want there?
That's exactly the plan. And the design of the public spaces is actually finished already. It comes with marina and with small bridge to the Liberty Island, and I'm asking them now to finish also some sort of layout of these smaller plots, so it makes sense. It's kind of continuing of the previous development.
Are those final? Is there a final decision to go with this architecture group, or are you still in process of choosing which design from which group you will?
Well, we want to, of course, kind of kick off the debate, and Zaha Hadid is the most renowned studio to do that. But they are also open, and they are discussing with all the other winners of previous architectural competitions how to integrate their visions, maybe in some sort of smaller version. But of course, everything really is depending on the investors, on the market demand for certain buildings, right? Mm-hmm. Like the idea that we're going to that the state will build public housing. It's not something which looks viable in Liberland, right? We are not that kind of state. So we really plan to let the designers and investors to debate how Liberland could be utilized, and maybe at some point the virtual reality will diverge from what the physical reality will be. But right now it should be a playground for different ideas and different concepts that is fully walkable, and that can actually be used for virtual meetings as well, or for some other businesses. People are putting up NFTs, or there are galleries, etc. So there are some cool things which are really popular these days.
You mentioned you needed 5,000 merits to earn a 500 square meters spot in Liberland.
Yes.
How can one get those merits?
Well, you can either help us with one way or another. The volunteers on this festival and people that help organize, of course, are getting citizenship, and some of them are getting 5,000 merits, but some of them are getting less because they didn't help us that much. But our biggest thing about getting the citizenship is we wanted the people to be involved, and if they are physically involved, they actually don't need full 5,000 merits in order to become citizens. They can collect their merits later. That just means they don't have the full political rights, and they don't have that many, I would say, ideal square meters inside of Liberland as well.
Let's talk about the mosquitoes.
Mosquito, that's a big topic.
Right? There's a lot of mosquitoes in this area. Is there a plan of the Liberland government to somehow fight them, or?
Well, this is really some sort of public good. if you have a definition of public good, the mosquitoes are, and as you can see, they're spraying here locally quite often from a helicopter. I think that's one of the ways that we could also kind of do this. It is kind of the matter of the national security to make sure that there is not a huge attack by mosquitoes on the citizens of Liberland. And as you could see, we actually sprayed the area 2 days ago, and it should be good for a week. But there's different other solutions. I mean, Singapore has also a big mosquito problem, yet it is one of the most prosperous places on the planet. They have this program of sending out basically females that were sterilized, and that way they are lowering the population quite successfully. So there are different genetic and other programs how you can deal with it. And I sometimes I joke about it that mosquitoes are Liberland's problem number one, but it is a solvable problem.
Well, great, yeah, because like it is seriously one of the biggest problems in this area. I feel like, other than the Croatian government not letting people in, I think.
I'm still thinking which one is number one for the physical development, but to be honest with you, mosquitoes are sometimes bigger challenge than the Croatian police. The Croatian police let the volunteers that were there stay there for 4 days without any harassment 2 weeks ago, but the mosquitoes gave them hard time all the day. But if you are properly equipped for it, and if you basically stick inside for the 2 hours that they're really active between 7 and maybe 8 and 10:30, then you're okay. And in the morning, of course, they bite as well. But if you're in a similar area somewhere near the river in Czech Republic, I think the problem is kind of similar. It's not, of course, like in the only radical way how to get rid of them is basically drain all the swamps, because that's a breeding ground for them. That would mean that we would have to civilize the area of Liberland, which we are planning to do anyway.
I wanted to ask, at this festival, I have noticed that the liberty of Liberland attracts a lot of bright and interesting and amazing people, but it also attracts some very strange individuals. And for me, it was a bit concerning when I heard, some of the opinions of people associated with Liberland, and I wanted to ask you if you are at all concerned about the people Liberland attracts. And
well, I have to say I'm lucky enough that the crazy people that are around Liberland are still quite a little, but sometimes they do some crazy stuff that is remarkable. The gentleman that is doing the woodwork, I don't know if you're referring to that one. Well, we hired him last week, and apparently we should have not hired him because he is probably on some sort of drugs. But he's not connected to Liberland in any way. He's just a woodworker. And part of that, yes, we had people that helped Liberland in the past, but they are really, I would say, crazy, right? So you have to deal with them, and you have to do something about it. There is only one person in the whole Liberland that got a persona non grata status.
What is that?
We had a pleasure of his visit as well.
Persona non grata?
Persona non grata, yeah. Like we don't want him around our events anymore.
Oh, really? So, as I understand it, Liberland has no immigration policy and open borders, right?
We're quite open, but the citizenship is not open. Like, we are happy if anybody moves to Liberland. We would be stupid at this stage if we were preventing somebody from settling Liberland. But and people are able to come, but the citizenship is not something that you can get right away. It's connected with your merits in building the foundations of the country.
Anyone can come into Liberland, though. Are you not at all concerned with like the people who will just come and live there? Like,
I'm very happy about them. Right, the settlement criteria is the only, I would say, missing element to the full statehood of Liberland. And when we are getting recognized by foreign countries, it is, I would say, the biggest obstacle for more recognition than what we have right now with Liberland. So we need more settlers physically. But I'm not pushing for it also. Like, there is no way to kind of push this, because we need to finish the homework. The homework is to get the constitution done. The homework is to make sure that we have a nice urban plan. The homework is to get the blockchain governance for Liberland up and running. And when you have all these elements, you really have a virtual kind of ideal statehood that I would say in return probably is for that entity, getting the land of Liberland settled, I think will be fairly easy, because I can see that there will be huge support for the project once these things are actually in place.
Mm-hmm. I have noticed you are planning to build and sell some houseboats. Is that a project you would like to talk about?
Well, unfortunately today we were supposed to have a ride on that houseboat, but because of some unfinished paperwork, I wasn't able to show it to you physically. It is only 5 kilometers away from here in Bački Monoštor, where the production is taking place, and it is a really nice project. It is a 17x8 houseboat with a landing pad for a helicopter. So it has 2 bedrooms and large living room, and Dea Tosh, the famous DJ, was supposed to play there, but because of some unresolved papers, I wasn't able to introduce it properly. I was really looking forward to have them because of the drone pictures and because we would really have enough space for the ride and for the party to Liberland. But that didn't happen. But that doesn't matter. We are actually building 3 more of them. I hope we will be able to introduce them in September. And it's important part of the story of Liberland. We need like proper way to settle Liberland, and right now you can actually live on houseboats next to Liberland as a form of settlement. It's the best that we can do, but we need to have a superiority on the river when it comes to the Croatian basically police presence in Liberland. So if we have 10 houseboats and we have 100 people on each, there is actually no way that we could be stopped from settlement of Liberland at some point. But again, I'm not in a hurry for that, because we've got some other homework that we need to do as well.
I see. So you eventually want to push through the blockade by overwhelming the police with numbers.
Well, that's the way, but at the same time, we also need to make some advancement with our relations in Croatia. And we need to also work with the community here in Serbia. This development project, I think, and this concert yesterday, which was very well visited from locals, is important step in that regard. We need to show that we are actually serious in what we are doing, and that we are able to take this place and turn it into something nice. Despite all the bureaucratic obstacles that you have in countries like Serbia.
You mentioned today on the boat that you are seriously considering building a nuclear power plant in Liberland. Would you mind talking about it on the podcast?
Yes, sure. There is a wire going away, only 300 meters away from Liberland territory, which will very well connect us to Croatia and Serbia. It's actually the only reasonable infrastructure that we have right now close to Liberland. And the CIA, when they wrote a report shortly after Liberland started, it was partially joking, in a joking way, but partially serious. And it was distributed, by the way, to all diplomatic missions of United States. That way, the message about Liberland actually spread. And it was suggesting that Liberland should build a nuclear power plant on the Serbian side of the river in order for Croatians to take Liberland more seriously. And funnily enough, one of my best friends is building such a device in collaboration with the Ukrainian Atomic Agency and Vítkovice, atomic energy, and the project is called David. And I'm quite excited, to follow his development whenever we go for beer. And they are actually the first ones to make it. They're the first ones that basically can put the whole nuclear power plant in like 12 containers, and they have a very reasonable 150 megawatt energy output of that.
I've also heard throughout the years I'm interested in Liberland that you are considering banning non-electric cars inside the country.
No,
No?
I never considered
No.
that. I think that's some sort of mistake. That sounds more like a policy that is going to be implemented in EU and in Prague.
Oh. Are there any plans for public transport, and what will be the ecology policy of Liberland?
Well, we are in the middle of the natural reserve, so we have to take care of that. But right now, I'm leaving all these things on the Zaha Hadid in order to come up with some best solutions. They do have a great experience from places like New York, Dubai. They have been building huge developments in China, and they seem to know how things work. But on the other hand, we actually do have a small work group made out of professors from United States about the transport, particularly roads, and probably also the public transport, which started some 3 months ago when I met them in Eccentric Club. And they are actually putting some sort of strategy together that is connected to this Hadid concept. But I haven't seen anything from it yet. But there is a serious group of professors that are lecturing on transportation that is involved with what we are doing.
So Liberland is planning on building public transportation.
Well, I'm not saying that Liberland as a state will do it. Actually, Liberland as a state is strictly limited to take care of security, justice, and diplomacy, and don't try to do anything apart of that. At least the Constitution says that. Technically, the Constitution can be changed, but that is the sweet spot of Liberland as a state, that it doesn't have the ambition to try to organize education or healthcare. Or public transport at this stage.
Yeah. That's why I was a bit surprised when I misunderstood you into that Liberland is planning on building public transport. But
no, I'm just saying there is a work group. I mean, that's good. It's a private work group. It's not associated with Liberland anyway. The gentleman is not Minister of Transportation. And I'm happy that somebody tries to think things through before they happen.
But the design of the city, would you say that fits into the liberty, justice, and diplomacy?
Well, I would say we also have to take care of the territory in one way or another, right? So we do have Patrick Schumacher, the CEO of Zaha Hadid, is the mastermind behind the free market urban planning concept. So the idea was to divide Liberland into 3 parts. One part with some, I would say, traditional planning policy, where the public administration would also find its quarters. Then one part with kind of free, community-driven, not state-driven policy on building, and then one third of Liberland that will be without any regulations on building whatsoever, and we will be able to see very quickly how each part will develop. But yes, this is one of those things which is a bit of challenging from libertarian perspective. How much state should be involved with the design of its own territory?
Yeah. I can see how that's very difficult to decide. What are some other considerations where you're not yet sure if and how much the government will be involved?
I mean, there are all these big libertarian debates and then things that we have to do in order to become acceptable by our neighbors. So the drug policy, the intellectual property, abortion, these are all difficult topics that will have to be debated in Liberland Congress. and there will have to be a serious debate on the compromise between the recognition and the acceptability by other states and the, I'd say, ideological background of Liberlanders.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the interview. Unless there is something you would like to add, I think...
I would like to add our motto, live and let live. And I would like people to invite to this place which we are developing right now next to Liberland, but also to Liberland for some nice boat trip. And I hope that the houseboat is coming fairly soon, so there will be also nice house that you can actually rent and spend your time on the Danube.
So is this place, this development already named?
It is called the Ark.
The Ark. Okay. So Liberland Ark.
Liberland Ark. It's like a Liberland village in Serbia.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
See you around. Thank you so much for listening to my voice. As always, if you go to my link tree in the description, you can find all my social media at one place. This includes my subreddit, where you can discuss this episode with me and other listeners of my voice. Don't forget to follow my voice in your podcast app. If you want to support me and my efforts, sharing this episode with that someone who might enjoy it is the most you can do for me. Listeners sharing the podcast is what makes it grow exponentially rather than linearly.